Hello everyone, and welcome to Interactive Artistry's coverage of Fumito Ueda. I hope you've all been having a wonderful day, and if not, I hope things get much better very soon for you and yours, and that watching or listening to this helps improve your day somewhat. First and foremost, and as always, thank you for the privilege of your time in tuning in. I truly do not take it for granted, and if you enjoy what Interactive Artistry does and want to ensure it continues, feel free to like, share, subscribe, tick the notification bell, and if you wanted to directly support this endeavor and help IA grow into the most fulfilled version of itself that it can be, consider heading over to Patreon, where any tier will get you the chance of winning an annual trivia contest prize. Other tiers include show appearances, the ability to choose video topics, and much, much more. With all that said, let's crack on. So on this entry we will be discussing the fifth colossus, also named Avion, and I have in front of me the Team Ico wiki. In front of me also is gameplay of the entire encounter going down, and essentially, as you've experienced in the previous entries of the Fumito Ueda coverage, just me and my abiding appreciation for this man's work and for his tireless commitment to just creating perennial, timeless, beautiful imagery that is at once mythological, fairy tale-esque, folklore-esque, and most certainly unmistakable. So here we go. So let's crack on, starting with the wonderful Team Ico Wiki's description, riffing from there. So Avion is the nickname given to the fifth colossus. It resembles a giant bird of prey. This agile colossus is found in a foggy lake in quadrant H4, which is, how we've divided up the map, perched atop one of the several tall ruins jutting from the waters. So Avion is directly east of the shrine, and as the sword indicates, all you have to do is head east to the cliffside path. Becomes narrow. When it widens again, the Colossus's lair is close, and if one gets lost, you can find a sunlit spot near the cliff's edge, where the sword's light will directly, it'll direct you to the lake. Awesome. So there's obviously a walkthrough here, but we'll dive into that later. And what we'll do first and foremost, as we've done earlier, is we'll dive into some of the trivia, right? So Avion is one of the only two colossi who has a visible mobile mouth. Dirge also has a moving mouth located on its underside. Avion is arguably the second most peaceful of all the colossi. It only retaliates after being hit itself. Incidentally, the most peaceful colossus is also the only other one that flies, which is the phalanx. Avion is the most easternly situated of all the colossi. On the map, Avion's lair is in line with Dirge, and Dirge is in B4 while Avion is in H4. There are no other colossi in between them, although the two are at completely opposite sides of the map. Putting Avion and Dirge in such positions may have been intentional, as the two are quite different to each other in a number of ways. Avion flies high above a lake close to the shrine of worship and is relatively peaceful until it is provoked. Dirge, on the other hand, lives underground in a cave within the sand, far away from the shrine of worship, and is probably one of the most aggressive colossi in the game, as it is constantly trying to kill Wonder. So Avion is roughly 140 feet or 42.7 meters long, with a wingspan of about 116 feet or 35.4 meters. It is one of the fastest of the colossi, potentially the fastest of all the 16. And Colossi is also popular. Avion is also popular among fans due to the experience of having to cling onto it whilst Avion circles the lake at high speed with a despair-filled farewell playing. So a very climactic battle there for sure. An encounter rather. Avion makes a lot of bird-like screeching calls which bear a passing resemblance to the cry of a falcon. And if Avion is stabbed on the part of the wings near its head, it will screech and turn its head to look at Wonder. If the player doesn't fire an arrow at Avion and leaves it perched on the tower that it begins on, Avion will not move, regardless of how close to that tower they get. If Wonder does this, Avion will watch him swim around the lake from its perch in a similar manner to how Malice follows Wonder's movement. Unlike Malice, however, Avion is able to freely rotate through 360 degrees and will not attack on sight, as Malice will. Avion is the only colossus where Wonder doesn't attack a part of its body that would be anatomically fatal. All other colossi are stabbed in the head, spine, or chest, but Avion is only being stabbed at the tips of its wings and tail, thereby terminating its balance in flight. Avion is one of the only two colossi who has three major sigils in normal mode. Phalanx is the other. Hydrus and Malus each have three minor sigils, but not three major ones. In the 2005 E3 demo version of the game, Avion was the fourth Colossus and Phaedra was the fifth, according to the statues in the shrine. And lastly, the song Silence plays during the battle with Avion, Hydrus and Phalanx, arguably the three most peaceful colossi in the game. Lovely. So to supplement this awesome description here, we have from the amazing Nick Sutner, who has been on our show a number of times, an excerpt from his wonderful book, which you can pick up from Boss Fight Games. I believe that's the title. Let me quickly check. Yes, Boss Fight Books. So you can head over there, just Shadow of the Colossus. Honestly, just a couple of dollars. It's really, really worthwhile, and just having it on your phone and whipping it out, you can actually do the whole, I've set it up on my phone where I can drag two fingers from the top and it actually reads it to you like an audiobook. Really worthwhile. And in case you're wondering, no, we're not sponsored. It's just because Nick's a good friend, and he's, it was very nice of him to lend his time towards being on the show. So yeah, wanted to just give him the appropriate a corresponding kind of shout out there for his contributions. And at one point it'll be nice to have him back on the program as well. Too easy, so here we go. Across a misty lake. The fifth Colossus lies even further across the eastern plains, past a winding cliffside trail overlooking a wall of waterfalls, supplying a large body of water at the bottom of the canyon. An intriguing island poking out of the middle. At the end of the trail, a small man-made structure catches my attention, the first of its kind I've encountered in this playthrough. There are save shrines, a glowing stone embedded in one wall, radiating energy. Kneeling before it, I'm able to save my progress in the field, as it were, rather than at the home base of the shrine of worship. I climb to the top of the structure, maybe 2 stories tall, up multiple ledges that are tiered like a wedding cake. As I stand on the very top, the camera pulls back, showing me the sweeping breadth of the landscape before me. It's as if Shadow of the Colossus wants me to take a moment and enjoy my surroundings at every opportunity, a respite from my dire mission and a reminder of all the stillness and the beauty of this land. Being there also gave me a context for the artistic motivations and inspirations behind some of the Japanese art and entertainment that I've enjoyed for years, from Princess Mononoke and Seven Samurai to Katamari Damacy and a myriad of Final Fantasies. Within much of Japanese art, there's a respect for the patience and curiosity of its patrons, and an aesthetic defined by ideals of imperfection and impermanence, wabi-sabi, subtlety, shibusa, and mystery, yugen, the perfect words to describe Shadow of the Colossus, I'd say. My peaceful moment looking out from the save shrine is interrupted by a lizard tiptoeing just below me, this time with a white streak of a tail, skunk-like. I hop down and loose an arrow, and the glowing white tail is left behind as my prize, extending my stamina bar slightly. Also, as I've mentioned before, listeners on previous entries, as a nod to Nick to ensure that, you know what, it really is the most worthwhile to check out the full book. I'm just sort of jumping around here, so just to kind of spread out the excerpts and really to encourage you to read the thing from start to finish with the book yourselves, for sure. Through another stretch of canyon, I find more antediluvian ruins, across from a rocky shore and rimmed with a sharp-looking wrought iron fence. It feels like the bowels of Iko's castle here. I leave Agro on the shore and swim through an archway, climbing up a column of stone on the other side. A fenced walkway takes me to an overlook of what appears to be a sunken city, the peaks of its buildings poking out from the water. It's at this moment that the next Colossus introduces itself, swooping majestically overhead before landing to perch on one of the tallest structures. This is Avion, simply called the Bird during development, a magnificent colossus with broad, spiky-edged wings and an even longer tail, easily double that of its wingspan, that dips almost all the way down to the water from its perch high above. According to Ueda, in the original design of this encounter, the player would need to climb up its tail from underwater, which is why it was so long. Avion is beautifully symmetrical, and one of the most literal recreations of a real-life creature in Shadow, beak, talons, and all. I'm also struck by the realization that I'm looking at Avion through the bars of a cage I've found myself in, as the overlook is surrounded by tall metal fences, completing the bird illusion. Jumping down from the overlook through a hole in the floor, I swim to the structures, jutting out of the water, pulling myself up on a low platform. Avion sits still, a sentinel waiting for my inevitable provocation. I fulfill my role of aggressor as I fire an arrow across the lake and into the body of my foe. In one sleek, silent motion, Avion rises from his spot, and in a single beat of his massive wings he's bearing down on Wonder, flying low and alarmingly fast over the water. Before I have time to think, he's closed the gap entirely, and I'm jumping towards him in a desperate bid to land and catch a mossy strip on his wing. I brace for impact, even closing my eyes for a moment, and the next second I'm clinging to Avion as he whisks us away, higher and higher into the air, the water a distant blue backdrop below. While Shadow is in part a product of Japanese culture, its design owes even more to the vision of Ueda himself. Artist is the best term for him. Kyle Schubel, Shadow's US producer, tells me about Ueda. This is Nick Sutner. He can articulate his vision through words and through drawings. A lot of times he won't even tell you. He'll pull a pencil out and start sketching, and magical things happen. I hate to mystify the man further, but he's incredibly creative. He's in his own world, and he knows the goal that he wants everyone around him to achieve well before he communicates it to them. The more you read and hear about Ueda, the easier it is to understand why Shadow is so extraordinary. According to Schubel, Ueda isn't even much of a gamer himself, finding most games to be too much of a diversion and choosing instead to spend his time working on his art and his writing. Little aside from me, I absolutely resonate with that. Even so, he manages to surround himself with like minds at Team Eco, and in this case Gen Design now, a team that truly believes that they were doing something special and trusted Ueda to see them through it to conclusion. For being a quiet guy, Fumito is a very compelling man. He really inspired people. It was like being on a state champion football team. You all believe you're going to win your next game. And like any champion team, they had to put in the hard work and overtime to see it through. Again, this is me skipping forward. Definitely go and check out the title. Literally, it's one of my most prized and favorite books that I actually keep on me at all times, just to sort of read through it. I'm in the thick of an airborne battle, completely removed from the quiet comforts of the watery ruins I enjoyed moments ago. While the other colossi enters were thrilling, Avion is an absolute rush. A frenzy of strings rises and falls as a choir swells in time, underscoring the drama of the moment. The wind whips by as I alternately cling to and surf the length of the beast, and as what looks like orange embers fill the sky around me. Avion's movements feel reactive to my own, and he twists sideways as I sprint the length of his body. I'm running out of stamina, and I plummet down with a splash into the water below, luckily missing the less forgiving ruins poking up from it, and everything is quiet and peaceful again. I've come too far, and I need to finish the fight. Avion cruises tranquilly above, and I re-engage his attention with an arrow. He swoops down, I jump, and we're back in the skies together, stumbling and shrieking. I finish off Avion with a stab to his other wing, and his death knell takes over. I'm thrown from his body as black blood sprays from his wing, an airliner out of balance and out of fuel. He crashes into the water, instantly submerged, sinking to the bottom of his flooded city. I try to hold my breath underwater to hide from the tendrils dancing in the distance over Avion's resting place. It takes a few long beats, but they eventually separate from Avion completely, shooting out like symmetrical lasers before honing in on me. And we have it, listeners and watchers and everyone tuning in and watching. Avion, for me, is a marvel, really. When we're talking about the sort of technological feat that Shadow of the Colossus was back in 2005, it's one thing to create just like a enormous sort of moving level lumbering around, sort of connected to the geometry and everything, but in the same span, in that same sort of digital space, to create something that is as large, if not larger, that that is just ambulant, that is flying, that is unhooked from any of that, to have that many moving parts, really. Again, when something is, I don't know if anyone here listening, tuning in, listening, watching, has ever sort of modeled something. but when something is sort of in free space, it's tricky. Like it's always easier to deal with something that's sort of locked to some geometry, whether it's connected to the ground, like sort of bipedal monsters and all that. Flight is always difficult, especially when portraying accurate, like at least flight that sort of feels natural. And obviously, Avion is like it's not. Possible. It isn't aerodynamically correct in any sense. So we're very much leaning into the sort of fairy tale side when we're talking about the way it's portrayed and the style of the way it flies and everything. But the primary thing for me is that as a kid I loved flying and I loved birds and I would watch The Secret of Nim a lot, which was all about this these mice obviously, but there was this character, the Jeremy the Crow, which like I dreamt of actually literally being a bird. Like it sort of leaned into me wanting to be able to fly and all that. I think a lot of young people actually have that dream and those thoughts when they're kids, and Avion taps into that, which makes it all the more heartbreaking when you take it down, because if these creatures are taken to be divine protectors of divine energy, then nothing really is more divine than something that is literally in the heavens. And it seems as though these colossi, almost like a well laid out sort of track listing, I think, for an album. Sorry for the out there example, but I've participated in organizing a track listing for an album, and you want to create a mini narrative between why you sequence one colossi after the other. I think all of the colossi were sequenced very deliberately to tell a story, and on this fifth one, what we're talking about with the number 5 is the fifth is quintessence. And quintessence is related to ether, and it is related to if you follow the sort of Mastodon album, which Mastodon are my number one favorite band, musical kind of energy force in the world, lifelong appreciator of that band, and their thing is going through the elements, and that's where I kind of first understood that the subject of quintessence, because that's the sort of basis of their Crack the Sky album, and there you have it right there in the title. Because really in many ways the air is the fourth, or rather it's one of the elements, and I've always thought that air and ether are just a veil away from each other. There's literally flying through the air, and then you pierce through, and already unhooked as being in the air implies you are unhooked and separated from the earth. Transcending into ether is just that next step, and so air and ether are very connected to me. Ether is always, for me at least, that I've seen it in my experiences and in sort of how I relate to this subject matter, connected to divinity, the quintessence. And so how I take the symbolism of the first winged colossi being the fifth one, it somehow resonates for me. Could be looking too deep into it, just seems purposeful to me in terms of just how deliberately well thought out these titles are, especially with Fumito, which there's very much, it truly is the case that there's no string of words that I can kind of accurately use to convey. No words for me can really convey what the man has accomplished for this medium and for art, definitely. And as I've said many times, even though some eye rolls are prompted from when I say this, that it's his works go beyond games for me. Kojima is within games, within this interactive medium, the number one. Fumito Ueda encompasses all of what I appreciate of art in general, and those are their own parity for me in terms of my gratitude and how much I resonate with their works, for sure. So for the rest, I will say, as well as like I would just literally as a kid I would just flap around like an animal. I would have blankets sort of tied to each end of a chopstick, and I would pretend to be a bird and perching on the side of the couch and everything. So I really love birds, and I really their portrayal of them is always like even in Zelda, the Rito and everything, anything where there's a feature of it being able to fly, it ignites the imagination. So leaning into that in terms of the symbolism of wonder, it just shows that this is yet another natural force, yet another line he's willing to cross to take down such a beautiful creature, which is in all ways flying should imply that you are free. That's what we envy about birds, is that they can literally leave all troubles and leave all troubles behind, that they're the freest of all creatures, so to speak. Even the ocean, creatures in the ocean, they need to return to it in many ways, obviously to breathe. We can't fly, so we are like permanently just sort of affixed to the earth. But birds, that's their realm, it's their choice, it's their freedom to fly. And so I always find it additionally heartbreaking, especially when you know that for a bird, if a wing is gone, and then that's the end, and to see this being brought down. And also that needs to be mentioned. You may be asking, why didn't Avion leave? It's obviously to be my reading of it. One point is that Avion is proud. Avion is that it's its territory. It wouldn't leave. Just like an eagle. Eagle has its hunting grounds, its perching grounds, so it wouldn't just fly like a coward. That's my narrative justification. Obviously, the game design justification is that it can't leave because that's its sort of area of the game map, and mechanically, to have this thing flying all around or into the stratosphere or something, it just wouldn't work. So it stays bound to the water. It makes you think about Avion's affinity for the water, which there are water birds, and in fact, the face of Avion reminds me of sort of water birds, because on my commutes to and from work, I there's a whole sort of gaggle of water birds that I see, and there's the birds that sort of raise their wings to sort of dry them in the wind. That I actually see a few of those once in a while, just sort of doing their thing, dipping underwater and everything. So these creatures don't need sustenance, they don't need fish or anything, they don't need to eat or anything, but it really ties in, like leans into that sort of almost Japanese patron protector, or like elemental protector of a place, that it wouldn't leave out of sort of spiritual obligation. So that's my narrative reading of that. So but yeah, I for now, to make sure that everything is kept as concisely expressed as possible with Avion, I will tie off this entry there, and if anything comes up, please, again, I'm going to dive into our little sign off, because what I'd love to do is to fill the rest of this space, for the remainder of the sort of the duration of these entries. I really want to dedicate it to the stories that people have for Avion, and for just for any of the singled out aspects of what I want to be discussing in these titles. And as we're going through, we're going to be doing obviously 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, etc. until 16 colossi there, and into Eco after that, and then Last Guardian after that, and then most certainly, I think, by doing area by area, character by character, topic by topic, with these 2 remaining titles, and obviously we're not even halfway through Shadow of the Colossus, but that's the idea, that we move through. And then for each of those, I'm most certain that the internet will empower this ongoing series of entries to bring other stories into the fold, and that's what I'd love. I truly would love to see that from all of you folks. So there you go. That does wrap up things for this entry. And if you did enjoy this or anything from Interactive Artistry, please feel free to like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to be notified as soon as new entries release. And also, please do head to patreon.com /interactive artistry to become one of the Patreon saints who make interactive artistry possible. And if you'd like to get in touch or submit an email or a voicemail, as in for these upcoming entries, obviously the next one after this will be the 6th Colossus, so please keep that in mind. It's contact@interactive-artistry.com, or you can also just go interactive-artistry.com /contact. So yeah, thanks so much everyone for tuning in and watching, listening, and yeah, until next time, bye for now.